Hello, everyone. Thanks for
Hello.
joining us today. We made a mistake. I made a mistake. It's the second time when I go in live and I forgot to push the button so we're live. So sorry for the delay.
We're live now.
Finally. So I'm Gabriela Cascinano from Introverts Academy, and with me today is Anne Hurtubise from Emotional Intelligence Corporation. Anne is a professional coach, executive coach. She worked with a lot of coaches, a lot of leaders, and she's also certified in MBTI and emotional intelligence. So, Anne, to start our conversation, tell us, what do you mean by empathy? Briefly, because I know that you will talk a lot more in the following questions.
Yes, I can summarize that very briefly. Mm-hmm. It's basically the capacity to be able to sense someone's feelings, concern, perspective about something. And that is from that, taking an active interest to be able to discuss that with the other person so that they can feel heard and understood. So basically, we do that through our communication, and not only through words. It's more about the nonverbal, sometimes the expression, people frown, or they will be more on the defensive or protection mode. And sometimes it's a silence, a sigh, and all of that give us cues so that we can have more empathy and respond with the person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I like to invite those who are watching us live, or maybe will see the reply later, to add any comments they have in the section, because we can come back to the comments, we can ask us questions, so we want this to be an interactive discussion. Another question for you, Anne. How introverts and extroverts display empathy?
Well, they display it differently depending if they're more focused with their heart versus the head. So if I give you examples of introverts who are more analytical, for them, their rational will start kicking it always first. And versus the introverts who are more amiable, more centered to the heart and the people and the well-being of people, they will display more empathy. And it's the same for the extroverts. The extrovert who are more in their head will be more driven to produce results and things like that, and they will neglect how people feel. And it's the same with the extrovert who are more heart-centered.
Introverts are heart-centered.
No. An extrovert who is more heart-centered will be more expressive, and they will take care of the feelings. So it's mainly about the head or the heart. So, and introverts and extroverts, they have different way of responding depending if they're more of a thinker or of a feeler.
And also, from what I know about extroverts and introverts, extroverts focus on the outside world, introverts focus on the inside world, and they are very good observers of what's going on inside and outside them. So if you take that in consideration, from what you're saying, because extroverts focus on the outside world, they focus on results, on action. So they tend to pay less attention to the heart, to those feelings, what they feel about the others, unless they are a little bit more tuned to that. So yes, go ahead.
It depends. If you take an extrovert who is very analytical, and when he speaks, he looks up because he needs to reflect and things like that. He will not pay attention to how people feel or respond to what he's saying in front of him. Versus you can have an extrovert who is more feeling oriented, who will pay attention how people respond to what he's saying. If they feel that they are engaged in the ideas that are being expressed, then they will be more engaged to go and do it. Versus if it's a leader that is more in his head and not so much on the heart, they just want results and things like that, and they pay less attention on how people respond to perhaps what they need to do. If they are overwhelmed with work, they might just say, do it all. So it's not really about introvert, extrovert, if their energy is outward. It's more about their thinking process. When they make decision, is it based on the rational to produce result? Or they take into consideration the impact it has on people. And those are the leaders who are more empathy driven.
Okay, thank you. So, in your opinion, how leaders can increase the empathetic abilities on everyone who wants to increase the empathetic abilities?
Yes, it's what's lacking the most currently in organization. And before the leadership path was very rational people, now they want more empathetic people so that they can coach, mentor their teams. And how we do that? There's a set of behaviors that needs to be done. So the first set, the prerequisite of empathy, it's to be able to listen attentively and paying attention to the person that talks to you. So often we get caught and we're multitasking and we're not focusing enough on what people are saying, and we miss things, and people notice and they feel I'm not important. The person doesn't see the need to pay attention to me when I speak or when I do something, and therefore I'm not important. And then the person who feels that have a lower respect for the person. And the second behavior is to ask questions to understand someone. So if you're not too sure, what's the reason that you are overwhelmed taking this extra task? And then you can discuss, and perhaps the leader who listens may be able to set different priorities so that they can do their work and not feeling overwhelmed. Therefore, they are engaged of producing and doing what needs to be done because they feel the manager is caring about their well-being. So the next step is to accurately read the nonverbal cues, like I was mentioning, the facial expression. If someone is doing, they don't want to do it. So then you ask question, and so that you can respond to all of that, because 93% of our communication is not the words that we use. So 7% the words, 38% our intonation of voice, silences, and 55% is our nonverbal. We all heard someone saying, "No, I'm not upset." But the tone of voice is not congruent. And that's what we're looking for leaders, so that they are congruent with what they say and how they feel, so that the nonverbal is aligned. So therefore, they walk the talk in order to engage, and this way that there's less costs of turnovers within the teams, stress leave, people who are more depressed and things like that, especially during the pandemic. There's more mental health issues, absenteeism. People are taking leave of absence, and often because they're overwhelmed with work and their leader are not assisting them in order to put priorities or hiring other people or put some project on the back burner so that they can focus on certain things. I'm not finished with myself.
Yeah, go ahead. I have questions coming up.
Yes. So the other behavior is to really show respect for any diversity. So the diversity, it could be gender. It could be that there's no discrimination between gender, between different nationalities, hierarchy. Some people might treat the receptionist in a different way than the CEO or a vice president. So that is really, you treat people the same manner like you would like to be treated. It's the golden rule. Do what with others to others what you would like them to treat you. So that's the next step. After that is demonstrating the ability to see things from someone else's perspective. So in other words, you put yourself in their shoes and you go walk 1 mile. So if you were in those shoes, hearing this or being treated that way, how would you respond? And often when we don't have that experience, we cannot put ourselves in their shoes. When we have experienced that, then it's easier to understand why they feel that way. And the last step is being able to understand the cause for someone's feeling that way. And again, if you've never been there, you don't know how it feels. As an example, I'm coaching a director in the US that for him, he has been fired very quickly, often. And due to organizational change, and because of that, he's hyper vigilant of bringing content of his in his office, because everything needs to be one box content, because he experienced so many times being let go. So in order for him to feel more safe in that, now he put the picture of his family on his credenza. So this way that he feels that he's settled there. He feels that he's reporting that the CEO is very happy and satisfied of his performance. So he can let go that situation.
Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that I have, a lot of leaders are stressed because of the situation, because it's a fast-paced environment. How do you deal with empathy in those conditions?
Yes,
How do you show empathy when
yes,
you're in a fast-paced environment?
Yes, and often it's just listening to people, saying, okay, what do you suggest? If you had a magic wand, what would you do differently? And be engaged in the conversation to find solution. And most importantly, hear the person challenges, their struggles and their concern. Because people don't need to be right or getting their way. They need more to be heard, that the other person really pay attention and hear their struggle. And often it's just a way to be heard, venting, and feeling that they're not alone, feeling that they were able to express it. And often this is sufficient in order to move on.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question. What's happening if what are the blind spots and the costs of lacking empathy?
Yes, it's often we don't know. Like for instance, for me, I did not know I did not have empathy. It's when I read the first book of Dr. Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence. I said, oh, I don't have empathy. Why I didn't have it is because in my family, it was not displayed. Mm-hmm. So I did not learn the behavior. And 7 kids, my mom was at home taking care of everything. So it was a lot of work to do. So therefore, for me I did not understand when I was saying something to someone that they could be offended. I was saying, why do you feel that way? I just said this and this. So therefore, first is to get feedback, to understand you don't have it. And what step can you do? So most of the leaders I work with, they are either low on empathy. And how I work with the leadership development, we do a 360, meaning that they are self-assessed on 12 competencies, and empathy is one of them. So their manager gives them feedback on so many different questions, their direct reports, their peers, their external or internal clients, and other categories of people that provide them feedback. And when they see that they're low on empathy, and most importantly, the verbatim comments that come with the 360 that shares the strengths of these individuals and the areas where they can improve. And you will see the empathy is over there. And in the scoring of that empathy, and when I coach them one-on-one, we review the questionnaire where they score low, and then we design strategy together, what they need to practice. And when they practice, then they can see how the people respond to them. And if it's positive, then the leader would say, oh, it's working, I will continue doing that. And if it's not working, then we have a good laughter and we find other strategies in order for them to practice. And the key is repetition. The brain needs to repeat in order to get better at it. And for me, I would say that my empathy is not like the empaths were born that way. And I know when I need to apply. If I'm doing a budget, I don't need to be empathetic. I know what I just need to put the numbers into the spreadsheet. And when there's a concern with someone, I need to put my empathy at and do all of the steps that I mentioned because I know how to do it now.
Mm-hmm. Another question, we talked a lot about the leaders who lack empathy or who want to improve on these characteristics, this ability. But what about those who have a boss, a manager who lacks empathy? What do you do?
Who lacks empathy? Yeah.
Yes. And I can give you an example. Someone who works a lot, extra hours, puts a lot of effort, happens to be an introvert, so it's a lot of energy consuming in that type of work, talking with a lot of people, goes to the manager and say, can we do something about the workload because it's too much, it's starting to affect my health, I'm too tired, I start having voice problems, I don't know how to handle this, can we do something about it? And the manager says, I talk to. So how?
And the manager responds what? I
talk to.
I talk to. I don't understand what you mean by that.
So the introvert was doing a lot of workshops.
Yes.
Talking to clients, dealing with participants at the workshop. So it's a lot of energy that an introvert spends. And doing this daily, it's too much. It could lead to a burnout. So actually, it was my case in 2015. That I'm talking about it, because I want other people to prevent this kind of situation. So what I did, I went to my manager saying, hey, it's too much for me. I start getting tired. The hours of sleep are not enough. I'm spending my weekends sleeping and 12 hours a day sleeping. I cannot handle anymore, and I start having voice problems. I couldn't talk for a month, then it came back later on. I couldn't talk for 4 months. So I asked her, can we do something about what's going on? And her answer was, I talk too.
Okay, and so I talk too. I see.
Exactly. And she gave me even more work to do.
Yes.
Kind of work.
Yes. So it was just the last sentence I did not understand. So she replied to you, me too, I talk a lot. So therefore, deal with it. So with a manager like this, when you know that there's no empathy, and I'm sure you did that, eventually you left the company.
Yes, I did.
So the human being have, how can I say, we're different from animals. We can make choices versus animals. They are pre-programmed with their DNA, eat, sleep, reproduce, versus human beings. We can make choices when it's beyond our capacity or we're not happy, we're getting sick. And if you talk to your manager and nothing changed, then you need to take your own choices and look elsewhere. And that's why the cost of leaders who lack empathy is very costly for companies, because the turnover is much higher. It burns out the people, the productivity reduces, there's less initiative because you don't sleep, you're not well. So it's in terms of the ROI, return on investment is very high when there's a leader who lacked empathy.
Yeah.
So there's a concept in life that humans can try to take control of what's happening to them, and you can influence in that regard. So you talk to your manager, and she did not want to do anything about it. So the other option is you let go. So you decide to let go of that job in order to bring back your harmony and your energy level so that you can heal.
Actually, I did a few more steps in between.
Yes.
I talked with my manager. She didn't understand. I was so upset because she didn't even want to talk about it to understand what's going on. So it shut me down. I couldn't talk with her anymore. But what I did, I wrote a letter to the HR.
Yes.
And HR scheduled a meeting between the three of us, someone from HR, me, and my manager, and we had the discussion. The manager said the same thing. I can't do anything about it. It's too much workload. I don't have money to hire someone else. And in the meantime, my health deteriorated, and I started getting more health problems, and I really got into a burnout.
Yeah.
And I got into sick leave, short-term sick leave. And I started looking into what can I do there. And I realized that every time when I was sending a message to my manager with a note from the doctors that I need 2 more weeks and 2 more weeks, she's like, and what happens after? By the third time she told me that, I was like, you know what? I didn't even know that I get into this point, because what happens in burnout, I thought that I can still handle it. My mind was still high. My moral was still high, but my health issues start piling up without me realizing what's happening. I start getting anxiety, panic attacks. So when I noticed that my manager, not even in those conditions, understand what's going on, I quit at that point.
Yeah.
And
Good
it was
for you.
not a good. It was good because I had some money aside, but it was not good because when I start looking into what can I do to sustain myself,
Yes.
they asked me, did you talk to the manager? Did you talk to HR?
Yeah.
I had to provide proof that it was a workplace issues, is not my own issue. So I'm bringing this up to people because they need to understand that, okay, you don't have an empathetic leader, but you can do the necessary steps to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
In front of the law, in front of the company, in front of whatever you need to handle with.
Yes.
To me, was that problem that I couldn't talk for 4 months, and at that point I started writing and I wrote my first book.
Yes.
So it turned out to be something good for me because now I can help more people with my book and with what I'm doing with Introverts Academy. But that at that point, you need to understand that, like you're saying, you have to take charge of your own situation because you cannot expect for others to help you forever.
Yes. Definitely, it's tough, and most people know within organization that you talk to your manager, then you can escalate that to the HR, and sometimes HR will be on the side of the manager, like you have experience. I have a friend who was a director, and she had to quit her job because her manager was pushing, and they were monitoring the time she was working and coming to her and saying, where were you between that time and that time you were not working? So it was over micromanager. So she finally went to see HR, and HR told her, she's a high leader here. We want to keep her. So you need to adapt to the leader. So what she did, she left. Because it's not empowering to work with people who have no empathy and micromanage you. And again, the costs of a leader who don't have empathy is very costly, stressful, and lots of turnover within the company.
And I guess it takes a toll on them as well.
Yes, of course. And for also people who are more headed driven, like you thought you were okay but your body was sending you more and more signals because you were not listening to your body.
Mhm.
And at some point had to cut your voice in order to listen to the body. And when we're very driven by the head, we often lose track of the body signals to say, take a break. It's too much for me. And the other aspect is to know yourself. Like the emotional self-awareness is, for instance, when you are an introvert, you cannot do workshops 4 days in a row. You cannot. You don't have enough time to redo your energy because in front of a group, it drains your energy. Versus an extrovert will get energy out of that. So you need to know yourself. What are your strengths and what areas that it's too much for you to not accept roles or tasks like this.
I did not accept when I realized when I started. You said that I was not paying attention. I realized what's happening with my body with the signals. At that point, I went to the manager, but she didn't understand that. She continued to ask me even more. So I realized that I'm doing some things that it requires a lot of time to recharge after. And I was putting more time to recharge because the workplace I was working on, I was doing something that I really love, helping people. So it was rewarding and fulfilling on one side, but it was taxing my energy on the other side. So when I realized that my balance was kind of going out of control, at that point I went to the manager, and between the moment when she told me, by the time my voice got cut, it gradually degraded. So I was aware of all of this, but I didn't have energy to look for another job. That's
Yes.
a problem when you get into a
Yes.
burnout, when you start
Yeah.
getting those burnout
Yes.
symptoms. You don't
Yes.
have that energy to go out and look for another
No.
position.
Yeah.
Even if you go to an interview, they will think that you lack of energy in general, not because you're at the edge of a burnout.
Yes.
So what I want people to take away from this, start taking measures before it's too late, before your body doesn't allow you to do anymore.
Yes. And it's to listen inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And the tools for that is for you to start meditating, setting up intention of the day, mindfulness, taking breaks, go outside, do things that you love to do, and celebrate. If you can have that celebration at the end of the week to celebrate what you have accomplished, what you're proud of. This way, when you don't have a manager that gives you praises, you can do it for yourself. So this way that it's all tools that could help. Even the empaths who are feeling all the pain of the world and the people around them, they need to protect themselves by the self-care that they need to give themselves with meditation, having conversation one-on-one with the people they love, and in order to nourish their empathy. Even though if it's a pet, to spend time with your pet and giving the love, receiving the love with the pet in order to self-care. And one empath that I recall, she was in my professional course, and at that time it was the discovery of the headset. So for her, she says it was the first time putting headsets and listening to music that she was not feeling the pain of people around her. So this way she could create boundaries. I don't want to feel people. I put my headset and I listen to whatever gives me pleasure and I'm interested to listen to. So that's another tool if it could help the empaths who are feeling everything and it's draining them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm coming back to those symptoms. Mm-hmm. They don't work anymore. Your tools don't work anymore when you start getting those symptoms. Because
it's too late. It's
exactly.
too late.
I'm someone who meditates since 2007. I had a daily meditation practice. I love to go in nature. I was doing those things, but the work was so taxing that I arrived to a certain level when these tools didn't work anymore. or
Yes.
not at the levels that they used to work.
Yes.
So people in general and us, we need to pay attention to not get to that level that the balance of our health kind of is thrown out of the window, and we cannot use these tools anymore.
Yes. And for you, if I ask you the question, in your view, when should you have quit? How many months or years prior to get to the burnout?
Right after the manager said that she's talking to,
Okay.
that was a moment when I still have enough energy. I didn't start getting too many symptoms. So at that point, I didn't think of quitting, but that was a good moment when I could step back and think, do I really want to stay here anymore?
Yeah. And how many months after that you stayed and you push yourself?
Like 5 months after that.
Yes.
So I had some time. So the symptoms is not from today until tomorrow. They gradually rise up.
Yes.
So you need to pay attention when the first one comes. Step back.
Yes.
Ask yourself, what do you really want?
Yes.
Go to your doctor. I didn't go to my doctor until the doctor sent me directly to the hospital, to emergency. She thought that I have a heart attack. Because I'm someone who is healthy usually. I don't take pills. I'm not sick. I get a flu every, 5-8 years. So I had a very good health. So I was thinking that I can still handle it.
Yeah, that's the head who is talking.
The head is like, I can still handle it.
Yeah, versus connecting to your intuition, your heart. And so as you could see, it could take 5 months to get to the burnout. So
no, the burnout was starting, but the difficult things were, it took 5 months. Until it cut my voice, it took 5 months.
Yes. Yeah.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
So, that's an interesting discussion about the burnout, and empathy. It's an important aspect of not getting there, because you have to have empathy for yourself as well.
I was just about to say that. We think alike.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
thank you for sharing your wisdom about that.
Thank you. I don't want other people to go through it, because even if I got on the other side, it was painful. It took months. It took me 10 months to get back to normal, because I lost my focus and concentration, anxiety, panic attacks, a lot of symptoms. And I gradually came back to it because I had that project, writing that book, that was a meaningful project to me. That kind of helped me get my health back. And I was talking a few years after with a psychologist, and I was talking about my burnout, and she's like, how long it took to you? And I said 10 months, and she's like, usually it takes 2-4 years for people to come back from a burnout.
Yes.
So she was curious why I bounced back so fast. It was that project that helped me, but it also was because I'm a professional coach myself. I was coaching myself throughout the burnout.
Excellent.
When the anxiety and panic attacks were showing up, I was using positive talk. I was at the Eaton Center at a mall at one point, wanted to cross from one side to another. And I was seeing people coming, and I start panicking. And I'm like, why I'm panicking? They are not coming after me. So I told myself, I'm okay. Every step I told myself, I'm okay, until I got to the other side.
Excellent.
So when you start using self-talk, because negative talk is coming very easily to us.
Yes.
When you start using more positive talk.
So this will work for someone who is more head-oriented versus feeling-oriented. They would need different tools. So for you, it was working, and congrats.
It was working in that specific moment. For the feeling, I was feeling all day long, but in those specific moments, I needed something else.
Yes.
So I was starting biking because I couldn't walk. I couldn't keep my balance. So I started biking. And my mom was like, how can you bike? Because you cannot walk. I'm like, yes, the bike is moving. So, it's important to pay attention to all these things, how you feel about it. For me, I didn't want to let people down, because I knew that they don't have someone else, and they didn't have someone else after I quit. And even those months when I was in sick leave, they didn't have someone, and all those clients who were needed help, there was no one there. So I guess that kind of pushed me to go over my limit. But I'm coming back right now and tell people, don't wait until you get to that limit.
Yes. And that way you were showing empathy. You did not want the clients to be left alone.
Yes.
So there was no succession planning. So that company did not buffer succession planning and buffer if you're not there, who's going to do the workshops.
And I guess it's happening in a lot of companies, especially fast-paced environment. They are high achievers. They are looking to, let's go, let's do more. They laid off people because it's not enough productivity, and other people get more workload. So empathy, it is important. So I'm coming back to that question: how we can help leaders become more empathetic?
So
in those conditions.
Yeah. So again, is all the steps that of behaviors that they need to display, to listen attentively, to be able to ask questions, to empower the other person, to provide solutions. As an example for you, when you went to see your manager, you could have provided solution. I can just
have a solution, by the way.
That's good. Okay, I didn't hear it before.
No, I didn't say it.
Yes. Okay. So that's what you can do, and they need to put themselves in the shoes of the person. And often they need a coach in order to guide them to achieve that, because they don't know how to do it.
I think they need a coach also to become aware of it in the front,
yes.
in the first place.
And that's why that's why we do a 360 assessment, so that they can see how they evaluate themselves, and they can see the perception of others. And often the gap is big. Sometimes people will evaluate themselves. They think they're very good, and the result is much lower. And then it's for them is a shocker. And often when we have the people who are more humble, they underscore themselves, and everybody scores them much higher. So with these individuals, we need to raise their self-esteem and self-confidence so that they can really fly with their own wings and have more confidence and how they communicate and so on.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we can do is share more often experiences like the one that I have, because we tend to not talk about it. I even met someone later on, she was a manager. She said, don't talk that you had a burnout. You won't get hired after. So
Not
there
good.
is some kind of misconception about what's going on here. We need to speak up more. These are things, mental health, it's important.
Yes.
So people become aware of the symptoms that can show up, and how they can bounce back faster, and what the company can do, and what conditions allow those kind of employees to burn out. So this should be a topic that will raise more awareness, and maybe leaders will become more aware. Hey, maybe I need to do something about it, and they will hear about empathy, and they will be more open to become more empathetic. So I think it's a two-way street. It's not only waiting for the leaders to become more empathetic or to be aware that they should behave that way, but also the rest of the people who are experiencing or notice something, the colleagues, for example, why they don't say anything.
And one good company who did that is Bell Canada. Bell Canada have took the leadership to talk about mental health. And why the leader is doing that? He has someone in his family who suffer from that. So for him, he says, I will take that as creating more awareness within companies. And we need more companies to do that. And the person who told you that don't talk about that, you won't be hired, they don't accept transparency for people to be authentic, because you have experienced that. Now you have a lot more resilience. You can talk about it. You can help people to not get there. And it's strengthening the conversation with the people who are around you to not get there.
And it's also a stigma about mental health, because if you go through a burnout, doesn't mean you will be like that forever.
No.
You
Yeah.
can recover. You're totally normal. I don't have any symptoms anymore.
Yes.
Since 4 years ago, I stopped getting any of those symptoms. So it's not that you're stigmatized for life because you get an experience like that.
For
And
sure.
some people don't even call it a burnout.
Mhm.
My doctor, for example, she didn't allow me to talk about my symptoms as burnout. She's talking like she has these kind of symptoms. So she created a list of symptoms that I was telling her that I have. So there is a lot to do in this area to help people understand that we are normal people. We go through experiences. We can bounce back if we want by ourselves with help. I needed a vocal doctor to get back my voice, because my doctor at the beginning didn't even believe that I have a voice problem, that I need to see a voice coach or a voice doctor. So a lot more people need to become more aware of these things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks to people like you who share your stories, and other people like the CEO of Bell Canada and so on.
Yeah. And the good news is I got hired after that when I wanted to.
Yeah.
I applied for the positions that I want to. So it's not that you can't do anything about it anymore. So
Great success story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. So do you have any more tips for the empath?
I think I covered pretty much. Do we have any questions coming on
don't
the...
see any questions
Okay.
from the audience.
Yes. So basically is practice one step at a time. As an example, if you have a tendency of not listening attentively, you can practice that with your family. If, for instance, you're at dinner and a child wants to talk to you and you're talking with someone else, you can just say, give me a second, I will finish my thought and I will come back to you. Versus saying, shut up, I'm talking, shut up, I'm talking. So it's not encouraging for the child to hear that. If you're watching TV and your spouse is talking to you, and you continue watching the TV and you're not turning your face to look at your spouse, you can practice that to reduce the volume and look at your spouse and listen, pay attention, and respond. It's a way to practice empathy at the core level, the prerequisites of empathy. So it's practice. What you have hard time to do, you can practice.
And you have a great point there. Our younger generations need empathy to grow healthy and become more successful. So it's not only about leadership, it's not only about workplace, it's about the family, it's about the children, it's about the people we deal with. So it's a skill that we all need to enhance.
Yes. And unfortunately, Dr. Goldman have talked about that for years, that because the kids are so much behind their phone and they are not observing the nonverbal of people. So therefore, they are not able to pick up those cues and with time understand what it means. So they're lacking that social interaction with kids because there's too much on their phones and their games and not interacting enough and playing with other human beings.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, with COVID and online, right now it's a little bit more for everyone, not only for kids. We're online for everything right now.
Yes.
Shopping,
Yes.
talking.
Well, it's okay to be online as long as everybody have their camera on. So leaders are not declaring enough to their teams. When we do meetings, I want all cameras on. So this way you can read the nonverbal and people will pay more attention to what is being said versus multitasking, doing their emails and not listening. And at some point, when something was brought up, the person would say, I don't recall we talked about that.
I'm not 100% agreeing with what you're saying that it should be. I think it's a matter of understanding why it's important. But from an introvert perspective, if I'm on a meeting, Zoom meeting with a lot of people, there is a lot of information out there. It's overwhelming for me. So I might not pay attention to everything that is said because everything is overwhelming.
I hear you. Yeah.
That's why, for example, I put a blank, just a blue background for me, because even looking at my face when I'm talking, at least I can focus only on that aspect instead of focusing on what's around me.
Okay.
So
let me ask you a question. What were you doing when you were working in a setup in a company where you needed to be in person in a meeting with all these people? What were you doing?
I can listen to them, but I don't have to look at them in their eyes.
Okay.
That's what we're doing at Zoom. They're expecting you to look at the camera. And everyone is looking at the camera, so you see all eyes on you, which is too much for an introvert.
Okay. So who said that you needed to look at them in the eyes? Who said?
Usually, if you look at something else, they think that you're doing something else.
No.
I was in a meeting at one point, and the leader of the meeting pointed me, Gabriela, what do you think about this? And I was taken by surprise. And what happens sometimes for introverts, you get blank.
Yes, because you need time to think.
Yeah, and
you need processing time.
Exactly. So imagine how I looked like. I'm a dumb person. I cannot say anything because I was put on the spot right away. So it's more than just being on camera, having the camera on all the time. It's more about finding ways of paying attention. For example, I pay more attention when I'm doodling.
Okay.
In a meeting, I take notes. Even if I don't read the notes after, I remember them better. I can listen better if I don't look at you.
Yeah. Okay. So a tip for you, when you've been put on the spot like this, you can say, let me think about it. I will get back to you later on in the meeting. So
I think the person did it intentionally because she noticed that
I know. I know. This person is more of an extrovert. And for them, they can think as they speak. Versus an introvert needs more time to process information and come up with the right answer. Versus the extrovert, they can just babble and da. And at some point they say, oh, forget about what I just said. It makes no sense. An introvert would never do that. They need to think, speak, and think.
Yeah.
Versus the extrovert, they talk, they think, and they talk.
Okay, so we came back to extroversion and introversion. So do you have anything else to add to our conversation? Anything that you want to share with our readers, our listeners?
Yes. I just want to say that bring empathy forward. And this way, like especially now with the pandemic, the families are so divided. So bring the empathy, understand the point of view of others, and respect their decisions. So bring the empathy forward.
Yeah, thank you. I like what you're saying because in system coaching, we're both system coaches, and you know that we're talking about the meta skills, which is an attitude that you bring to whatever you're doing. So you can have a conversation, but you can have that conversation from a certain attitude. So if you come to the conversation with the attitude of empathy, you will have a more empathetic discussion than if you come to the discussion just to share some words and concepts and the techniques. So be more conscious about what you bring to the conversation, what you bring to the interaction beyond the information that you want to exchange or share.
And most importantly, if you bring the empathy, you're not judging. You're not criticizing.
You don't have time for it because you're too focused on the empathetic.
Well, you come with the heart instead of the head that we have learned going through university that we need to critique, we need to analyze, and we bring that everywhere and it's too much. It's okay when we discuss strategies and things like that. And when it's about the human interactions, or we need to listen more or things like that, understand the people where they're coming from, we need to put the empathy hat. Therefore, we can park the judgment and criticizes.
And it's allowing also to bring a different perspective to the discussion, because if you criticize and judge, you're just talking about what the other person said and you don't agree with it. But when you come from an empathetic perspective, you bring a new perspective that maybe it's different from what they were thinking or they were expecting from you. So you open up the discussion to much more.
And that can be done with open-ended question. How do you feel about it? You know, what would you recommend? If there was no restriction of nothing, what would be the best way to address that? So you engage them into a solution that they're okay with and they feel comfortable with.
That sounds like curiosity. Being curious.
Questions is about being curious.
Being curious about the other person, about the topic, about how the person is feeling, what the person brings to the table, and also bring up whatever you have to say. So it's a two-way conversation, not just one-side monologue.
Yes, especially if they ask, what do you suggest? Then they welcome you to come to the conversation.
I like what you're saying, because actually you need to bring yourself. When they welcome you, you need to open up and share whatever you want to share.
Yes,
Don't
definitely.
just hold back.
No, if they ask, they give you the permission. They open the door for you to help.
Yeah. I worked with a lot of newcomers in the past, and they're coming from different countries around the world, and it's a different environment from the Canadian professional environment. And most of them are surprised that in the professional environment here, people are more open. You can go to the manager, you can make a suggestion or come up with an initiative and discuss it. So they, in many workplaces, they allow you to. So you have to bring that attitude. Don't just wait for them to invite you. It would be great if they do. But there is some space there where we can do something.
Absolutely. And you're part of the person who initiates that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming today. If you want to know more about Anne, her website is eicor.com, acor.com.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
do you want to say your academy, Introvert Academy website?
Yeah, it's introvertsacademy.org. You can find there on the resource hub. We have free resources for you. Anne just was so kind. We had the discussion at the beginning when we talked about introversion and extroversion in the professional world. This video is in the resource hub. And also in the resource hub, you get much more content that is free. So you can go there and find more information. We have courses. We have a lot of goodies for you.
Thank you for your generosity.
Thanks for coming. And thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.